WWE wrestler Daniel Puder. And I just want to say thank you for accepting my request.
Yeah, thanks for having me on tonight. I enjoyed wrestling for WWE, and I enjoy doing podcasts and everything else. You're a rock star, so thank you for having me.
I appreciate it. Now, before we get started, now this is a half hour, 45 minutes of your time. You can say anything you want, curse if you want to. And I'm going to pass the show over to you in a little bit. And you can ask me anything you want. You can put you in charge, and all people like that. And it's just a normal conversation, and hey, you're making a new friend out of it. So, killing two birds with one stone. So,
Love it. That sounds great.
starting off, what can you tell me about yourself?
I started off with wrestling when I was young. I was born in Cupertino, California, and started wrestling when I was about 12 years old. Had some great coaches at a very young age. Mr. Lee was my wrestling coach, and then I started wrestling in high school, and then I started training with mixed martial arts. It was a lot of fun to be able to train at American Kickboxing Academy in San Jose, California. And then from there, I went amateur, went pro, wrestled for WWE, went back pro, wrestled in Japan, fought in Costa Rica, went back to Japan. So I've had a good career.
No, I don't want to be like an old wrestling conversation, so even if I am going to ask you a couple of wrestling questions, but what everyone would like to know is who is the real Daniel Puder and who influenced you to get into the wrestling? Two questions.
Ah, who influenced me? My dad did. He was an amazing mentor, and he still is, and a role model. And at a young age, we just wrestled at nighttime. When he spent time with me, he got me into being physically fit and doing sports. So it was a blessing to be able to have somebody like that in my life. And I did a lot of this. I was raised to serve others and help people, and did a lot of charity stuff when I was young. And so, growing up to be able to become a pro athlete, one of my biggest things is always giving back. Is how do I make an impact in other people's lives? And so, we've done that. I got out of fighting a while back, and wrestling. I just came back actually wrestling, but doing a little bit here and there. And making an impact, in this world. A lot of people just want to be that pro athlete, and then when they're done, they're done. But I wanted to go to that next step and really leave a legacy about what I could bring to people around the world.
No, absolutely. I agree with you on that. Now, at the same time, do you think I'm doing the same thing or try to compare myself to you? Like you, and that brings up a good subject, actually. Once people become famous, do you think, number one, they have a responsibility to give back? Because we all pretty much start on the same level. We all come from the same place. So, do you think, answer the first question, have a responsibility to give back? And number two, do you think what I'm doing is on the same level as what you were doing, as in giving back and making an example?
Yeah, everybody does it in their own way, right? I had the opportunity to wrestle and fight. I was blessed with a mind that just wouldn't stop. And you're doing podcasts where you're able to make an impact. With tens of thousands, millions of people eventually that will listen to good quality athletes or personalities or celebrities or just your friends who will give them words of advice and inspiration to make an impact. So yes, I believe everybody does something in their own way. Now I take it back. Not everybody does something that's positive. I know a lot of people that don't care about other people. I know a lot of people that are challenged themselves and they really don't care. It's all about themselves. So I believe that what you and I both do is definitely on the same level of we're dedicating X amount of time in our life to be able to do something to make to inspire and add value to people's lives.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, the next question I was going to ask you was, how did you get into mixed martial arts? And how did mixed martial arts open the door for you to get into the WWE, or did you try out to get into WWE?
Well, mixed martial arts, I got into MMA fighting when I was about 16 years old. Went into a gym called American Kickboxing Academy, and Frank Shamrock, Javier Mendez, Bob Cook. I had Brian Johnson. I had some really good uh, uh, mentors who took me under the wing and pushed me. You know, the challenge was when I went in the first time is I didn't have $150 a month, and so I figured out how to do it. I walked in and they gave me an ass whooping, right? You know, I mean, they really pushed me to the point where some days I'd go into the corner and cry, and they'd come over and they would pat me on the back and they would say, you know what, you're going to be a rock star someday. You know, keep on pushing it, because if you can withstand us, nobody out there is going to be as tough as us. And they were the world champs, you know, so I just took the beatings, I took the lumps, and I figured out how to make it work. And not everything, everybody, looks at Bill Gates and Carlos Slim and these billionaires or these big pro athletes. What they don't see is they don't see the challenges, right? They don't see the hardship that they have to go through to get to where they're at. The dedication. I used to have to run on Friday and Saturday nights. I just to prove to myself, I would be running past some clubs, or I would go to the gym, and everybody else was out at a club or doing something, and I would be exercising, I'd be training, I'd be, doing something that was going to help me get to my future. So it's been very challenging, that with the MMA side. Now, to get into pro wrestling, I actually tried out for the Tough Enough before $1 Million Tough Enough, and I was about to make it. I had a couple things going on in my life at the time, so I wasn't able to. And then from there, the second time $1 Million Tough Enough, I tried out for that one. One of my good friends, Dave Meltzer, saw it on an ad one day, and he goes, "Bro, you got to try out for this new one." And so I did, and we rocked it. I was made top 50 out of 10,000, and then I made top 8 and got on the show, and then I went to work. But I worked very hard. I was the only guy, stayed in Connecticut every week. I was the only guy that didn't go out and party and drink. I was very consistent with what I wanted and how to get there, and it was a lot of fun.
All right, now we're going to take a quick commercial break. And when we come back, I do have a couple of hard-hitting questions, but I'm also going to pass the show over to you when we come back. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to 244. I am your host, Keith Andrew. Along here is a good friend of mine, Daniel Puder. And as I said before we talk to commercial break, I'm going to pass the show over to you, and we're going to ask some hard-hitting questions. Now I'm going to put you in the driver's seat. You can ask me anything you want. If there's any stories you want to tell, any hard-hitting questions you want to talk about, you can take off the gloves.
So tell me where you grew up, and tell me then how you got into launching this podcast.
All right, so basically I grew up in, the upper part of Orange County, New York. And let's hang on. Yep, it's still recording. Okay, the thing popped up, said it was some error. So basically, grew up in the, let me rephrase that. I was born and raised in Orange County, New York. Been here for half of my life, 27 years. And for the longest time, I was tired of using my learning disability as a crutch. Can't do this, I can't do that. Got to be a burden for someone. I end up being in a group home, yada, yada, yada. So one day I was like, screw it. Actually, I was like, fuck it. Like I said, uncensored, you can say whatever you want. Freedom of speech. Another thing I'm going to clarify in a couple of minutes. So basically, came up with the idea. I was tired of being label it as a handicap and say, I can't do this, I can't do that, I can't do what you're doing. So I'm going to show to people, hey, I may not have the opportunity and privilege to go to college. I may not have been able to do this, to do that, or do what you're doing, but I'm going to prove to them, hey, I live only once, we live only once. I'm going to reach my goal. You talk about grasping the brass ring or taking one step in the ladder. Or Fester Salone says it's not about how hard a wife punches you. It's about how hard you can get punched and keep moving forward. And if I butchered that, I apologize for all the Fester Salone fans out there. But basically, I was tired of being turned into an influence, saying I can't do this, I can't do anything, and I was like, screw it, and I'm gonna amount to something. And I came up with a talk show. When I was in high school, I was a part of the audiovisual department, and my dad influenced me when he was making his high school videos for his school. And I met this other guy. I won't mention his name, but he was the head officer of the audiovisual department. He taught me how to do this. And thanks to those two people, they really influenced me to really get my mind on what I've been doing. I used to work in retail, another question I was going to ask you. I used to work in retail over at Woodbury Commons, and I worked at one store. I got sick out of it. Took me a whole year to recover. And I was like, you know what? And this is after Hurricane Sandy, too. And I was like, you know what? I don't want to be miserable anymore. I have a couple of siblings that I use them for my inspiration. They're doing their own thing. They're, a poetry writer, or my other brother, he's doing his own thing. The point is, they have, most of the people in my family had learning disabilities at one time or another. But look at what they're doing now. And for me, it's always been scaled back. There's always been an excuse. There's always been someone, somewhere, holding me back. So I was like, screw it. So I came up with the talk show in 2003. And, are you still there?
Yeah.
Alright, that thing just cut out for some reason.
Oh.
Basically, 2003, don't ask me why, seemed like a good idea at the time. I did all audio conversations. I interviewed Barbara Goodson. I interviewed Ron Reisman. Kerrigan Mayhem, for people who want to know who they are. People from Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. People from Dragon Ball Z to an Amazing Spider-Man. Just like anyone and everyone. Unfortunately, at the time, they were saying to me, oh, you have, and it still gets to me, you have this great format. Why aren't you as big or bigger when you portray yourself to be? Why don't you have sponsors? Why don't you have this? I don't know. Would you like to help me with that? No. If you can't do it yourself, I guess you're not capable of doing what you love. And I was like, yeah, thanks a lot, asshole. I didn't say that to him, but I was thinking it. But then I did it over. Yeah, half of the people who were nice enough to do it the first time, like Ron Reisman, Kerrigan Mayhem, to name a few, and Wendy Pablo, by the way, they were nice enough to do a video format. And there were the other 50 that said, we're not going to do it. Oh, why we say that? Oh, you're wank hurting my career. My publicist thinks it's beneath me to be around people like you, to work with people like you. Oh, I want my interview to be on private. And I'm like, then why did you agree to be on my talk show in the first place? I don't mean to bitch to you, but it's just one of those things that are like, don't do something if you're not going to follow through with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And thanks to you, we're up to 244. And it's the same thing with you. If you weren't passionate about your mixed martial arts or your WWE career, you wouldn't do it. Doesn't matter if you had a learning disability or not, if you're missing an arm or a leg. If you were passionate about something, you would do it. So I came up with the idea of saying, I'm turning myself into a perfect example for people out there. Hey, you may be in a wheelchair, but if you want to dance or be an actor, you prove to people you can still amount to something. No, the whole point is, don't let people label you. You should prove to them, say, hey, this is my life. I'm not hurting anyone else. I'm turning myself into a perfect example for people out there, and you should just go with it.
Mm-hmm.
Make a long story short.
So one day you just got on and just started calling people up and getting them on, huh?
It was about 2000, end of 2012, beginning of 2013. I was like, I don't want to work in retail anymore. I've been there, done that, and especially getting sick out of it. That's another story I don't want to bitch to you about, but that was one of the big reasons, give you the highlights. I always had panic attacks when I was growing up. You can say I'm a wuss, My mom used to come in and tuck me into bed and give me like a goodnight kiss on the forehead. And when she didn't used to do that, it would, my heart would beat. But it was under control. Because it was just a phase, I got over it. I worked in this one store, and I mentioned this to Brodus Clay. They hired me knowing the fact I had a learning disability. Long story short is, they knew the fact I had a learning disability. Then they didn't like the fact I was working with an organization who helps people with special needs keep the job. They wanted to get rid of me. Told this Muslim girl to flirt with me, regardless of the whole religious thing. That doesn't really matter. Told this girl to flirt with me, and I use you for a perfect example. Oh, we're friends, and I hope you actually mean that. But you wouldn't go and talk to like Vince McMahon and say, oh, Keith is stalking me, Keith is doing this, Keith is doing it, and I would get yelled at by the chairman of the board. Ha ha ha. I know that's a horrible impression, but just so I make people laugh. And he said, okay, keep your shit under control or you gotta get fired. I walk out of the room. And for the people out there, I didn't talk to Vince McMahon. I'm just using him for a perfect example. Anyways, so I walk back on the sales floor. You would be the girl, and you say, oh, we're just, her exact words, oh, we're just fucking with you, we're having fun with you, we know you have a learning disability, don't take it so personally. And this went on and on and on, and eventually, I spent more time in the bathroom throwing up, having panic attacks, felt like I was having a heart attack, probably was. But good news is I was being paid for my time, but the bad news was it was affecting my health. Took me a whole year to recover. Then I went to West Point where I was trained as a custodian. Tried going back into retail. Yeah, I took some years off. And I used he thinks I'm an ass kisser, but I used one of my brothers as an inspiration. Because he was on TV, he's doing this, he's doing that. And it's like, you have a learning disability. I have a learning disability. How are you able to do this and I can't? So that's when I made up my mind, says, you know what? I'm going to reach and I'm going to push against the wall. And as Harvey Specter says, if someone has you up against the wall, what do? You break the goddamn wall down. And you push on through and you make an example out of yourself, saying, I'm tired of being labeled, and this is what I'm doing. I know I just went on this little rant, and this is your time after all. Yeah, it's basically, yeah, you asked.
So it's interesting is, and I thought of this a couple months ago, is when I was a kid, they said I had a learning disability, right? Because of how I read. So I just don't comprehend the words when I actually read. It's very challenging for me. So a couple months ago, I'm thinking about it, and I'm like, hold on a second. Everybody has, well, if they want to label it a learning disability, that's one thing. I say we just have learning challenges. Everybody learns differently and at their own pace in different things, right? So if those people that said I had a learning disability got into a cage with me in an MMA fight, I believe that they would be the ones with a learning disability, right?
Right.
So it's just, it's just interesting to be able to see that perception. I don't necessarily put it on the teachers though. What I do is it's the system. The system from the top creates these words that label, and so there's very few people that think outside the box. And I always, like these kids, some of the kids I work with, I call them high energy, and they're very challenged. They go home, they don't have dads at home, they don't have moms, the moms are on drugs, the dads are in prison. Some very challenging neighborhoods. And, different organizations, different people that I've worked with, they call them bad kids or, trouble kids or that sort of thing. And so I just go, well, do they have a lot of energy? And they go, of course. I go, so how do we give them something positive as a label instead of labeling them as just, they're a bad kid? And I had people actually sit down with kids and say, this is my bad kid. And I have to correct them in front of the kid. And it's challenging because at the end of the day, everybody's going through challenges, that either financially or physically or emotionally or spiritually or mentally. I mean, there's all these different challenges, right? Everybody's always got a challenge. So if you're going to look at it like what you said before, you used to look at it like poor me, and now you're like taking it by its horns, right? And you're just going for it. So it's pretty amazing. I really respect you for what you do, and just reaching out. A lot of people, I don't know how many people you reach out and what the success rate is, but more people need to understand and get on your show and actually talk about what they're doing good for this world.
No, absolutely. Now, wrapping up on people, what I say, well, why are we talking about this? I like to make my interviews interactive, number one. And just because you're a wrestler doesn't mean it's like, tell me about wrestling. I want to know this. I want to know that. It's like, you want that, go over to another channel because there's over thousands of people doing the same thing. I mix it up. You are a real person. I'm a real person. And it's like, you're not just a wrestler because you're a human being. You did other things besides wrestling. So, just for people out there, now I'm going to make them happy because they're in their own bubbles. And the first thing I want to ask you is, did you enjoy your WWE run, number one? And number two, do you think you could have gotten a lot more out of it? Or do you think you would ever return?
Up to that point, I learned more in 1 year about who I was in my life than I learned before in any 1 year. Probably in a few years combined, just because it pushed me mentally, physically. I changed my, how I looked, what I said, how I thought, a bunch of, I really changed my whole perspective in life and my work ethic and everything else because I was at that level. And so I understood, and I understand today what it takes to get there. It takes a lot of consistency, a lot of wisdom from a lot of good coaches, and it takes time. It takes patience to be able to, just like you. If you want to crank out 200 of these in a week, it'd be a little challenging, right? So, I thoroughly enjoyed that year. It really made an impact in my life, and I've had a couple other years since then that have, I think, even gone past that, and it's pretty awesome. But it really got me to see something different, and I got to see the country. I got to see, I got to travel, and I got to make some really good friends.
All right, now wrapping up, I do have a couple questions I'd like to ask you off the air if you don't mind. But you bring up a good point, 2 points actually. Who do you still keep in contact, and who do you consider a good friend, number one? And do you think you would ever go to Global Force or go back to WWE, or you think you got to wrestling out of your system?
So I just started wrestling again. I created my own league called My Life, My Power Entertainment, and it's just not a league. We're going to be doing concerts and some other stuff, but primarily it's about wrestling. And we did a show in Houston. We're going to be doing a show in Miami June 21st. Sorry, take it back. November 14th. I just did June 21st. And so it's going to be great down here. You know, we're doing it, and the purpose is not to wrestle to make money. Necessarily, the purpose is fundraisers for a nonprofit that's making impact within communities. So, wrestling for another company, it would have to be a deal that just I couldn't refuse. It would have to be so good, you know. It's just and it's almost impossible to give me something that I want like that. I'm going to continue wrestling. I am retired fighting, which is great. But the wrestling stuff I'm going to do, and my goal is to be able to wrestle, you know, once a week, once every couple weeks around the country, and create bigger and bigger events, and really make a bigger impact with our future generations. It's called, our tagline is fighting for our future. So, having a lot of fun with that. Would I go back? It's possible, but it would be, it'd be just. They would have to give me something insane. So, it is what it is.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned you have a couple good friends. So, like, are you friends with the Divas, or are you friends with, like, John Cena? Or, like, out of older wrestlers that you worked with, who would you say would be your good friends, and who would you say, we're not really the best of friends, but we tolerate each other?
One person that I chat with here and there, like Bill DeMont, for instance. Crystal Marshall, she was with WWE for a while. Bill DeMont I don't talk to too much lately. A couple guys from like the indie circuit, Alex Cruz in Houston. I really like my tag team partner, Major Mark Roy. He's just a rock star. So I've got to spend more time lately with other people who are on the indie scene per se. But it's been a joy. It's been a joy to stick around and just build some great relationships.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, wrapping up, do you have any funny stories you like to share, or any words of wisdom you want to say?
Yes, funny story and wisdom. I got both. I got plenty of stories. Funny story was that I was every single time that we went anywhere in Tough Enough, and you can see this on the Tough Enough video. Every time we went somewhere, consistently, it was Al's birthday. He probably gained 100 years within months. It was amazing. On the airplane, we would have everybody on the airplane singing it. In a restaurant, we would have everybody in a restaurant. It was just awesome. We had a great time. Al's just, he's just a pleasure in life. He's an amazing guy, and he was a great mentor. And to lead that into the wisdom, he told me one day, he goes, "It's better to be respected than liked, and not respected." So I've worked on that very hard in my life to be able to, keep relationships, build relationships, and enjoy life.